I think the immediate reaction when things go sideways or you run into a bump is like, okay, well, this isn't
Cut
working.
ties. Exactly.
Let's move on to the next. And what I've realized in my life, not just with my husband, but in relationships in general, is that the tough stuff is the secret sauce.
Absolutely. That's where the magic happens.
Yes.
That's the glue that holds you together.
Exactly. Because if you can get through that, whatever it is, then you can get to the next one. If you can get through the next one, you can get to the next one. And before you know it, through all these little mountains that you're climbing, you finally get to a place where you look out and you say, wow, look at all that. Welcome to Make Minutes Matter. I'm your host, Karen Gilhooly, and today's guest is Bri Temple, Chief Commercial Officer at Talkify and Eros, where she leads every customer-facing function and helps scale one of America's largest matchmaking platforms. Known for turning bold ideas into sustainable growth, Bri blends data-driven execution with purpose-led leadership. This helps her teams work smarter without losing what matters most. I am so excited about this conversation, and I think you will be too. Welcome, Bri.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, it's not often that I have someone from a matchmaking firm on my show.
It's not often that I get to say that in my career either, that I'm a matchmaker, but it's been an interesting 2.5-year journey.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of fell into it by accident. It's funny. I started, well, let me go back. When I was first going for my undergraduate degree, my bachelor's, I originally started in psychology and thought that I wanted to go into marriage counseling, thought that that was my path.
Close. You're close.
Close. I was close. And definitely felt like that was something that felt like a passion core to me. I think that a lot of people probably relate to it as children of divorce of their own parents. That's something that I felt like was a personal calling. And then later on, just sort of fell into sales and started business and was doing all of that and had success and started getting recognized. And so my path deviated, right? I fell away from that and definitely felt myself going in a different direction. And then full circle moment, came back to Talkify about 2.5 years ago and was introduced by the person who's our current CEO, Chris Kumar. We had worked together at a past startup and he had introduced me originally as the VP of sales and I came into that role for about a year. And then later on came in to take on our broader teams. So,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when we think about the concept of relationships and the important role that they hold in all aspects of business. Your background in sales and some of the other things that you've done really have positioned you perfectly for what you're doing now. Yeah,
I would say so. I think it's been it's a little mixture of everything, right? Because I think it brings out the best of what I like to work on. Every startup has, and every business really has its challenges. If it didn't have challenges, I think it would be boring. And by nature, I think I'm a problem solver. I'm somebody who likes to root out how I can make things better and how I can work on the task at hand. Startups provide a lot of that. So that's been something that's been a theme throughout, even though different industries, I've had the opportunity to work in. Each one has challenges and things that they're trying to solve.
So you thought you were going to be a marriage counselor.
Yes.
So did you know this when you were like 5 years old or when did you come to this idea?
If you talk to any therapist, they would probably say that they were drawn to the field probably from some personal life experience, some lived experience that they've had themselves. And so for me, my parents, I grew up in a military family. My dad was Air Force. We moved around quite a bit throughout the U.S. Very traditional upbringing, I would say. My mom was largely at home. And then later on in life started working, as we were school age, started working around the school system herself. She was a crossing guard. She was a substitute teacher. She was a front office person, did all of those things. Anything that allowed her to also be on her children's schedule, right?
Yes.
Which we know so often for moms is the case. And then my dad traveled frequently for work, right? He was in the Air Force. He was often on assignment in different places. And he was himself in government intelligence. So he spent a lot of time overseas and did that. So he was fairly, I would say, absent from my upbringing. And so I know you've had other guests as well chat about the relationship that you have or didn't have, with your father. And I felt like that definitely manifested in my childhood as well. So when my parents divorced when I was a teenager, or started that process when I was a teenager, it was complicated, but it wasn't a hole in my life in the way that I think it could have been otherwise if he had been more present. But it definitely brought to mind what I did not want in my own relationship, right? And things that I think were important to me and values that I wanted to have in the relationship that I hoped for my children, future children, to have with their father. So that was really important to me, and something that I think that I was intentional about when I looked for my spouse. Looking for someone who would wear every hat, would be just as in it as I was, and do those things. So for me, that was definitely something that I think influenced my choices, and then later on became something that I thought would be something other couples might struggle with, right? And so that felt like a natural fit to want to work with couples on how to bridge that, how to set up their relationships, and what kind of relationship they wanted to have with their children.
That's fabulous. I mean, my initial career goal was to be a teacher. And I was really committed to that from the time I was very small. Ended up going in a very different direction. But in later years, I've often thought that going into some type of psychology would have been a really good, interesting fit as well. My background family has a similar trajectory as yours. Some differences. So so I'll just share this. So my dad was a fireman, and from the time he was 2 or 3 years old, that's all he wanted to do. He was absolutely born to be a fireman. And he finally got his dream job, married my mom. They were both very young. They had no money. And one thing about firemen, or anyone that's in the civil service, is in the city of Chicago anyway, is they don't make a lot of money. So if you're a fireman, typically you are also working a side job. So that was okay for my dad. The shift would go for 24 hours, and then you'd be off for 48, and you could do whatever it is that you wanted to do with that 48 hours. And it helped that my mom also came from a fire department family. So she was used to this kind of crazy schedule. And the fact that the person that she married would behave like her dad did, which was to go out and get into a second job to be able to support the family and whatnot. So for me, what was interesting is that my relationship with my dad was so non-existent at the beginning till I was probably in my 30s, because he was working all the time. So growing up, when I would see him, communicating with my dad was involved probably 2 or 3 things. Getting him a Pepsi out of the refrigerator.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Changing the channel.
Yes.
I was the first remote control.
Yes. I was food delivery.
In our family.
Yes.
Karen changed the channel. Or just being told to be quiet because he was trying to go to sleep. So that, and he was not an overly communicative person in his personal life. And in the fire department, he's far more vocal and engaging. But at home, he was just exhausted. And so my parents had this kind of crazy relationship with each other. They were committed to each other. But they didn't spend a lot of time talking. They were kind of off in their own little things. He was focused on the fire department and making enough money to keep the family moving. And then my mom's job was to keep the family moving.
Right.
And she did an excellent job of that. And as I watched that, though, I thought there has to be something more to this.
Right.
Because I wanted more.
That's right.
I wanted more. My siblings would look at me and they'd say, as I was building my career, it's like, why are you doing that?
Right.
They didn't quite understand it.
Right.
But anyway, it was just a funny thing. It's funny. It's funny how you see things in your life and you say, I either want that or I don't want that, and then you have to figure out how to make it work. But my goal, similar to yours, was I wanted my kids to see something different.
That's right.
I wanted them to grow up and see that, number one, you could have a job that you loved and still be engaged with your family.
Yes.
And 2, I wanted them to see me and my husband working together
Yes.
to make something happen.
That's right.
You know?
And I think that's very similar to what we do in matchmaking, right?
Yeah.
We advise customers all the time that, when you're looking for your person, it's wonderful to come with this list of requirements, which a lot of people come to the table, especially women,
Yeah.
come to the table with this laundry list of very specific attributes, must be over 5'10", must, have hair, must have, right? All of these things. And it's wonderful. And then also we need to spend some time thinking about, are you friends with this person, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to spend time with this person?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it about that person that would make you want to spend time with them? When you think about my favorite movies coming out, who's the one person I want to go run to the theater with? It should be your spouse, or I hope for you that it is your spouse. And so what is it about that person that you share those commonalities around that you want to be together? And I think that's one of the best gifts that we can give our children, is to see a strong relationship built on friendship between their parents. I think that emulating that is one of the keys to them being successful then in their own relationships.
Of course. We live in such a disposable society.
We absolutely do. Yes.
And I think the immediate reaction when things go sideways or you run into a bump is like, okay, well, this isn't
Cut
working.
ties. Exactly.
Let's move on to the next. And what I've realized in my life, not just with my husband, but in relationships in general, is that the tough stuff is the secret sauce.
Absolutely. That's where the magic happens.
Yes.
That's the glue that holds you together.
Exactly. Because if you can get through that, whatever it is, then you can get to the next one. If you can get through the next one, you can get to the next one. And before you know it, through all these little mountains that you're climbing, you finally get to a place where you look out and you say, wow, look at all that.
Yes.
Look at that. And for people who are willing to throw that away, it's just striking to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's hard to find.
Yes.
Right. And so somebody to go with you go the distance for the journey of a lifespan, right? I know we're talking about, the moments and the minutes that matter. And also I think it's the measure of a life.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I mean, I think, I don't know how you would think about it, but for me, I can't imagine being at the end of my life and thinking that I wish I had 5 more minutes to be miserable.
Yes, exactly. Or 5 more minutes to work, right?
Yeah. No. Well, actually, I might want 5 more minutes to work.
That's true.
If I was working at something that was fun.
Absolutely.
That I felt was engaging, that would bring people around.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So, but I certainly wouldn't want to be miserable.
No, you would not want to be miserable. No. And I, thoroughly enjoy my work, and probably too much, and love to spend time with it. But I think that if it were my last 5 minutes, I'd want to just be with my husband, my children, and have them surround me and know that I'm filled with love and that they can feel that love from me.
Yeah.
I've heard that said about grief, right? Often is that it's love without a place to go. And I think that I would just want to leave them with that feeling as much as I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back to your early part of your career. One of the things I find fascinating about you is that you've done so much.
I have done a lot. Yes.
So tell me a little bit about how you've moved from this whole idea of going into marriage counseling to where you're at right now. Let's spend a little bit of time at each one of these pit stops along the way and what you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, somewhat broad strokes, I'll say that I've been incredibly fortunate to have opportunities working with some tremendous leaders. And some amazing leaders, both amazingly good and amazingly bad, right? That shape, I think, your experience and your journey. One of the things that I always said to myself is that if I was ever in the leader's shoes, I would believe in radical transparency, right? That'd be really important to me, is that I share everything as often as I possibly can. And then you realize that there's an element when you're actually sitting in that seat that it's not helpful, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so you have to find the moments and the things that are going to be impactful in that transfer of enthusiasm as our job as leaders, right? To get people excited about the mission at hand. So I think that a lot of the opportunities that I've had in my career have helped shape that. one of my favorite experiences earlier in my career was actually working for DirecTV, which I know now is a bit dating myself. I'll go even further to say that I was introduced to my husband while we both worked at Blockbuster Video.
My goodness.
So really,
oh my goodness.
to really go back.
Hold on for just 1 second. I just have to say this.
Yes.
So over the holidays, my husband, we had a lot of family around, and so both my boys, girlfriends, wives, cousins, all of this. And my husband was regaling the tales, like, oh, this and that. And I could see when he would talk about something that they didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
he was bringing up TV shows that they had no clue, games that had never happened, stores that used to exist. So so it's just funny.
Yes,
Blockbuster.
Yes, Blockbuster Video. Yeah, that's a story I'm sure we'll get to at some point. But yes, my time at DirecTV was transformative, and I think in part because I had a fabulous female leader that I worked for who I love dearly, still love to this day, and I think gave me the space to, it wasn't so much that she was standing over my shoulder showing me how to do the job or that she was directing me to do this or that. But I remember my first day on the job, she was like, how'd it go at the end of the day? And I said, oh my gosh, there's this problem and there's that problem and there's this going on and that's going on. And she was like, well, I trust you'll get it taken care of.
Yeah, she believed in you.
Yeah, and that's all she said. And I think that's all she had to say. And knowing who I was a person who would root it out and get it done.
Yeah.
And I would go after it and I would be a dog with a bone and I wouldn't let it go until I felt like we had gotten something fantastic from it. Allowed me the space to do it. And it was an environment where I felt like I thrived. I got a tremendous exposure to a lot of different things. I worked with vendor management, BPO partnerships, global experience, all of those things. And that was really, I think, a catalyst to a giant part of my career going in a different direction. I realized I really enjoyed working with people and I realized I really enjoyed leading people, leading teams.
Yeah. It's a huge responsibility.
Huge responsibility. And I didn't take it lightly. But the thing that I think that I became really keenly aware of as a leader is that every decision you make and every piece of advice or feedback that you share, anything that you do as a leader, it has a direct impact on people's livelihood.
Yeah.
So that has never left my mind is that I have a responsibility, not just to the people that I see sitting in front of me, but also their families, right?
That's exactly right.
And that weighs heavily on me for sure. And it definitely is something that I think great leaders, not to say that I'm a great leader, but to absolutely something that I think great leaders have done is to think about the impact, hopefully a few steps ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I really love that idea of what it looks like at home. And before we go, I just want to comment on your idea about the great leader. I think you are a great leader. I think we are all great leaders in our own respect because we all bring something. Yeah. If we're committed to it, we bring something different to change the world. So you are a great leader. But this idea of what happens at home is something I think many people who are in these leadership roles often overlook. And that's that we do have this responsibility. We've got a responsibility to make sure that when the person comes to the workplace, that they are engaged, that they feel fulfilled, that they have purpose, and that they bring that sense of fulfillment when they leave and go home. Because without that, when they walk in the door, they are a lesser person.
Absolutely.
They leave their house as a full being.
Yep.
They come to the workplace and either what happens rejuvenates them throughout the course of the day, maybe even amplifies them. But if it's sucking all of their energy away and they walk in a husk of a person, that is wrong. It's wrong on so many parts. It's just wrong. It's wrong. And for people that have children at home, going back to what we talked about earlier, to watch someone trudge in the door day after day after day, feeling that they are just wasted. Not wasted in the abuse situation, wasted in terms of their time.
Right.
How terrible is that for a little kid to look at that as normal? That's bad.
It is bad, and I think has such an impact on the wounds that we then carry, and then the choices then that we make are born out of that, right?
Yes,
And so what
exactly.
kind of path and what kind of, we talked about before, emulating behaviors at home into what we want in the future, either will be something that they endure and then rebel against and create the opposite for themselves, or something that they will continue the pattern.
Yeah, exactly. What a fascinating conversation. Tune in to part 2 of this conversation with Bri Temple. See you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Make Minutes Matter. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or click the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And let me know what you thought of today's conversation by following us on Instagram at Karen Gilhooly 1. That's Karen, Karen, Gilhooly, Gilhooly, and the number 1. Let's make every moment in your career truly matter. Have a great day.